Hey, Tony here, Random Adventures 2.0. Well, this is not a camping video. This is a video about an interview that was conducted on me. Basically a year since I've talked to Dave Mack. So Dave Mack has a channel called No Carb Life. A year ago, he interviewed me after I was maybe 9 weeks into Carnivore, and I was giving him an update. Well, he wanted to do a follow-up with me and hear how my journey's been going now that it's 443 days later. So I wanted to put that interview on here because I know a lot of you that watch my channel have questions about why I eat meat all the time on my videos now. This is a really informative video. Dave asks a lot of great questions. This is more kind of to give you a little bit more insight into why I'm carnivore and all the benefits that I've gotten from it. Now, I do want to do a little disclaimer here. I'm not a medical doctor or a professional in that sense. This is just me not giving advice, but sharing my testimony of what the carnivore has been doing for me. Well, I hope you find some good information, and it just piques a little bit of interest, but a little bit more insight into me and Random Adventures 2.0. Why we eat ribeyes, why we do all that stuff. But maybe leave me a comment down in there how you like this, and if you found anything that was maybe piqued your interest a little bit, or that you learned something new about me. All right, well, here's that video. Here we go.
Tony, how did you find Carnivore?
Hey, Dave. Well, it's been a journey, and I'd heard a lot about it over, several years, but never really gave it any consideration until I met a couple people that were actually doing it. And one of them is I was down in Florida for a hammock event. It's where people go to hang hammocks, and that's what I like to do, is sleep in a hammock. And there was a gentleman down there. His first name is Matt, but he goes by Homeless Santa, wears a Santa hat and things like that. And I met him down there just, in brief passing, and I'd seen him at other events as well. About 4 months later, I saw him at an event up here in Pennsylvania, and I saw a guy walking around in a Santa hat, and I looked at him because he didn't look the same. And I said, "Homeless Santa?" And he turned around and he says, "Hey, Tony." I was like, "Oh my goodness, you look completely different. What's going on?" He said, "Oh, I started the carnivore diet. I'm losing weight." And there was one thing that caught my attention about that, was his next sentence was, "I'm off my diabetic medicine." And I was like, really? So for me, Dave, I've been diabetic for at least uncontrollable and trying to control it for like 8 years. And so that really rang with me because at the same time, I was also dealing with stomach issues. I had basically going to the doctor on a regular basis, trying to figure out what was going on with my stomach. I hate to be too graphic, but basically liquid diarrhea for about 5 years. And they were trying to treat that. I was going for colonoscopies, endoscopies, testing me for about everything. So I wasn't in the greatest spot when I was talking to him. But hearing I'm off my diabetic medicine, that was just amazing to me. So fast forward a little bit. Well, over the weekend. So I came home early just because of my stomach and things. And I went to the grocery store and I thought, you know what? I'm going to look up carnivore. It says you just eat meat. So I did a little bit of research, went and got stuff to prep. And I said, I'm going to try this. I've got to do something because my diabetes was so out of control. There's so much with diabetes, trying to do research and getting so many conflicting stories. And at the time I was on a once a week shot and a daily pill plus other meds. So, but I thought, you know what, I can do this. I can give this a try. I've tried other things. So let me go ahead and give this a try. So I went to the store, bought ground beef and a chuck roast, and I literally prepped my first 5 days. So I got all my food ready and did prepping. And I'm glad I did because the first week was interesting. You're overcoming all these different hungers that, your body's just going through a lot of transition. But I would say that's how I found out about it was through Homeless Santa. And then another young guy that was doing it that I'd met a year earlier. And he had posted that he had lost like 70 pounds. I wasn't really into it much for the weight loss. What resonated with me were the health benefits that I was starting to hear about because he had a lot of mental health issues. And yeah.
So that's awesome. So, like, there's no diabetes now?
No. So fast forward. So I started it out that first week and, I was, you know, I was eating on a regular basis, meat, bacon, eggs in the morning, but that prep was key to me getting through that first week. But one of the things that I noticed 3 days in, just about every craving that I had started vanishing. But I checked my blood um, at on day 3, because I was checking it each day, and I got extremely worried because my blood sugar level was at 70. Now, my wife was away in Pittsburgh visiting her mom, and my blood sugar, you have to understand, has never been 70. It was usually, even on medication with the once a week shot and the daily pill, it was always in the upper 200s. It was 300, sometimes 400, even on medication. That's what was so confusing for me. It's like, oh, I'm taking all the meds and I'm eating as, trying to be balanced. But when I saw that 70, I was like, uh-oh, because it was time for me to take that once a week shot again. And I was like, maybe I better not do that right now. So, because she was away. So I slept with syrup next to my uh, nightstand while she was away because I was worried that I was going to, it's never been that low. And I can't tell if it's high or low. The only way I can tell is with a blood stick. So 2 more days went by in that first week. And then I was like, I'm still getting good numbers. They were, usually when I eat, they really spiked high, but they weren't spiking. And I'm like, well, I am still taking that daily pill for diabetes. Maybe I ought to just stop that. I've got a blood test coming up. This is how I rationalize it. I've got a blood test coming up in 8 weeks. I'm going to just see what happens. What could hurt? So I don't know if I recommend everybody doing that, but I'm talking about me personally, right? So I couldn't wait for this blood test because I wanted to know. Well, I went to, for the appointment. They took my blood. I went back a week later, and she comes in the office. Now it's a PA. She comes in the office and sits down, and I'm sitting on the little table there, and she opens up her laptop and is looking at it and goes, wow, your numbers are looking really good. The medicine's really working good. We getting now. You have to understand, we've been dealing with this for quite some time. And she said, they look really good. Your A1C's really good. And I was excited at this point. I'm like, what's my A1C? And she said, it's 7.1. Now, it was 11.8 leading up to that, just at my last blood work. So this is 3 months later, and then also starting in the carnivore. So I was like, really? She goes, yes, we're getting this dialed in. It was her wheels were working. And I'm like, yeah, well, I haven't taken my shot in 8 weeks, and I haven't taken my pills in about 7 weeks. And her jaw dropped. And she says, well, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm doing the carnivore diet. And just to come out and say that, or she went, you're doing what? And then she said, well, what about vegetables? And I said, no. And she goes, well, what about fiber? And that's when I said, well, the stomach issues that I've been dealing with that we've been trying to figure out for 5 years. She goes, yeah. I said, that went away on day 7. She said, oh, Well, you should still take the one diabetic pill because it's not for just diabetes, it's for your kidneys. So I asked questions. How's my kidneys? And she goes, "Oh, they're good." So that started the journey. Now I am 443 days into carnivore now, and I've had multiple blood tests since then. So
That's great. Like, so you 443 days, the bathroom issues were gone in 7 days.
yes.
And so you didn't take that pill that she was saying, "Come on, just take the one pill."
No, no. No, so what I was going to do next is jump into what she told me when I left.
Mm,
The cholesterol, things like that, and then
okay.
come back in 3 months and we'll see how it goes.
Mm, right. And so, like, your A1C at that point was 7.1. Like, what
Yes,
is your A1C now? Do you know?
it's right around 7.1 still. And one of the things that she told me was keep it as long as you're under 8. She says I'm fine with that. So it's always been down at the 7, the low 7, and yeah, I think there's other factors that are kind of involved with A1C. The long term, like I do a lot of camping. So I've learned that being dehydrated really affects your A1C. Um, for me in particular, I think my red blood cells live longer, you know, and that's a measurement of your red blood cells is the oxidation on them. But I think not everybody's blood cells live the same amount of time.
Yeah, I've heard a similar thing. So along the lines of, your A1C going down and you feeling better,
Mhm.
did you lose weight?
Yeah, so that's one of the things I was going to talk about too is not only did I didn't lose a drastic amount of weight because the omeprazole, and that's what a lot of people focus on is weight loss. But the with the omeprazole that I was on, or Ozempic, Ozempic. And so the once a week shot I was on, that the side effect is weight loss. So I had lost and then was maintaining a weight at a lower weight, about 170 is where I was at. I'm basically maintained without a shot or anything like that I'm on average about 157 to 162, depending on when I weigh myself. So the weight's been off for a long time without meds, but the Ozempic brought the weight down as part of the side effect of trying to control the diabetes. But there's a lot of health effects with that as well. So I'm
Yeah,
really doing it through eating.
right. And so 157 to 162, and how tall are you?
I am 5'8".
Okay. Yeah. Um, so now you're completely med free?
Yes, yes. So I was taking like acid reflux medicine. I was taking, stomach medicine, the acid reflux, blood pressure, um, a lot. I was taking about 7 different medications, water retention, things like that, and yeah, no, off all meds and things. And it's really been a journey, but also a journey of education, of learning not only how food affects me, but also just the dynamics. There's so much misinformation out there in the medical field. I mean, I'm going to be 60 this month at the end of the month, and one of the things that I was thinking about is that I grew up learning about the sugar industry and the promotion of the FDA and the pyramid and things like that, which is really I grew up, my age. We grew up in sugar, being introduced into the American diet, and the heart disease and all the stuff that has increased over time has been throughout my lifetime, my generation. And to be hearing about younger people now getting involved with food and going, wait, why is that, in our food? There's a bigger push now for, especially, it's encouraging because of where we're discovering, what affects us. And unfortunately, I feel like I was a guinea pig, my generation, because we grew up saying, oh, eat this, eat that, you need a little bit of protein, it's going to cause you a heart attack, all the stuff that they said.
Right. Yeah, it's shocking that we were brought up doing the exact
Mm,
or being told we needed to do the exact opposite of what we should have been doing, you know? Um,
yeah.
so it must be quite freeing, especially because you are, as you mentioned, you're so active,
Mm.
to not have those bathroom issues, to be off all your meds.
Oh,
It's just like the handcuffs have been taken off, right?
yeah, and it's affected me in more ways than one because, as you know, I have, started a YouTube channel camping and stuff. It was mainly to get out in the woods because I noticed that being in the woods, helped me stress wise and just being out in nature. But having those stomach issues, it was a real challenge to grow and to be out there in the woods. So, um, having the stomach issues gone was extremely freeing. But 4 years ago when I started the channel, it was the 1 year anniversary of my channel. I had that major stroke where I lost all movement on my right side. Was the 1 year anniversary of my YouTube channel. Now, I want to say that stroke, neurological injuries, and stuff. A lot of people will say, you inspired me because you kept going out into the woods. Well, I was dealing with not only stroke recovery, but also the stomach issue and all the stress and the diabetes and the medicine. But looking back at it now, is it was a journey. It was a journey of learning to heal. But I did a playlist for stroke. Well, I still have some effects of the stroke on my right side, but 2 months, two not 2 months. It was a total of 4 months into the carnivore. Now, this is I started at 2.5 years after I had my stroke, and 2.5 years I was not able to move my toes on my right side, and I noticed one morning that I could move them just a little bit. And then I started focusing on a little bit more. So I don't know all the effects of it, but I know that I can now wiggle my toes on my stroke foot, and that was starting about 4 months into carnivore. Being out a whole year now, I'm moving it easier than I was. It's not back to where it was, but it's doing that as well. Yeah.
Wow. So regarding the stroke, like what happened? Where were you when that happened?
Well, in the morning of the stroke, it was the 1 year anniversary of my YouTube channel. I hit 500 subscribers and I went to work. I was like, woohoo! I worked at night. I was doing 12-hour shifts at night, which that added to a lot of stress as well. But I went to work and I was having a little bit of a struggle trying to write um, on a checklist because I would do training on forklifts and stuff like that. And I had to train somebody that night, and I was at work and I noticed I was struggling to write a little bit. And I've got good handwriting and I was trying to force myself to write. But I was like, I was in a hurry too. And because I needed to train this guy. So I ran the equipment back and then I had to walk the warehouse all the way back. And I found myself walking and tilting to the right as I was walking. I was trying to walk faster, but I almost like that leg didn't want to move forward at the same pace. And throughout the evening, he stopped me once when I was training him. He said, Tony, are you trying to talk like that? And I said, no, I'm trying to articulate my words. And he got very concerned. So I called my wife, and she's a nurse, and she heard me as well on the phone. She goes, "Get a hold of your supervisor." So I did, and then got transmitted over to the hospital where for the next 3 days, I lost all movement on my right side along with my speech as well. And then I picked up my phone at that point and because I had the YouTube channel, and I said, "Hey, hit 500 subscribers and had a stroke, literally, but come along on a new adventure of recovery," because I was determined to recover, but it was very scary.
Right. And so was it just a few days in the hospital and then they released you and it's just been the recovery since then?
Oh no, no. So I was in the hospital for about 6 days, and the first 3 days they had me laying on my back because symptoms kept getting worse and worse. And they didn't give me a shot when I got to the hospital. They said it was too late, but I think they thought it was from the day before that I had started getting the symptoms, but it was that night when I said at work, they were thinking day shift a day ago. But so they, I was a candidate to go to a rehab center, a medical rehab, because I couldn't walk, I couldn't dress, couldn't anything. So I was in there for about 7 weeks, I believe, over at the medical health thing, and I walked out of there, but from a wheelchair, stood up, walked a little bit, rang the bell, like, "Hey, you can walk." But I really struggled. And then it was home therapy for about 2 months with physical and also physical therapy and also occupational therapy were the two. In fact, I told the occupational therapist, I said, "Oh, I thought you'd get me a job by the end of this." But he says, "No, that's to teach you how to do certain things so you can function."
Wow, it's such a long road back, yeah. Um
Yeah.
a- and but now, like as far as your right side, I mean you mentioned you're getting the movement back in your toes, but like do you can you tell that you've had the stroke?
Oh, yeah, if I get very tired, I'll slur my words still a little bit because I know it's a lot of neurological things as well. But I've seen improvements all the time. Like this is my good hand, which is now my left hand. But this is as fast as I can move that hand. And when it gets cold, I can feel the effects of it. I do when I'm out in the woods, I do wear my leg brace because I have a little bit of drop foot. But over time, there's just with the muscles not firing the little ones. So your big muscles fire all the time, as you're recovering, but it's the little muscles that need the recovery. But I'm a firm believer in that if I wasn't carnivore, I don't think I would be seeing the effects continuing to prove because we're talking 2.5 years later. And when they were telling me, you're pretty much, I went to physical therapy as well after home therapy. I went for almost a year. And they said, "Well, there's pretty much not much more we can do." And I don't want to hear that. And so I got frustrated and things like that. And I was like, well, I guess. But being on carnivore, I've noticed even 3 years out, well, March of 2022 was the stroke. And I'm noticing things, even though they're not huge because your big stuff comes back first. Um, I'm noticing the little things are still improving. So I think you improve all the time. And it's really, I'm learning about what you're putting in your body as well. It encourages that.
And yeah, definitely eating a high fat diet it seems to be
Mm.
a positive for stroke recovery.
Mm. Yeah. And yeah, I was going to say that as far as the high fat, I know when I was earlier on, I was eating more fat, which that's your fuel. But yeah, my diet's changed even since I began. You find you don't really chase after a lot of different things that you were in the very beginning, like food wise. Your foods and your tastes is change as well.
Yeah, so, how is your diet these days?
Well, my diet's really good because food's not a draw for me anymore. Which, if somebody would have told me that, 444 days ago, that, oh, you wouldn't be thinking about food anymore, I'd have been like, ah. But having lived it, that the more I'm carnivore, actually, it was within the first couple weeks, I started to notice that, hey, did I eat? Oh, yeah, I got to eat, and I've eaten less and less as the more I'm carnivore. It's like I'm really not hungry, so why eat? But when I'm hungry, I eat. So, but food is no longer a driver to me. And that mindset, or not mindset, but when you're out and about and things like that. And everybody's going, oh, what time's lunch? Oh, lunch is almost here. That I don't even think about lunch at all, but everybody's like, oh, we got to eat breakfast. We got to eat lunch. We got to eat dinner. And they're always planning that next meal. Look at how much time in a day that spends. Think about how much time that is in a week. Think about how much time that is in a month. Thinking about food. What are we going to eat? Oh, let's go to the grocery store. Let's do all this. So there's been a lot I've learned just about myself and how much more time I have when you calculate out when you're not consumed by food or what are you going to eat next. I have my staples.
Yeah, so when you're not constantly distracted by when's the next thing coming, it's you can get on with your life and you can actually do things and be productive, right?
Yeah, yeah, you find out, oh my goodness, I've got so much more time. Now, I fill that with my channel, and things like that. But even being a carnivore, and having a camping channel, because that's what I do. I do car camping, hammock camping, just stealth camping, which is where you're camping like maybe behind a billboard. One of the drawing factors people really like to see is, what's Tony going to eat tonight? Because I would do crazy meals like ramen noodles and throw in a tuna and, throw in a couple nuts and some really crazy stuff that I would make. And I've gotten some comments over the time because people would be like, oh, I'd make crazy desserts as well. Like I would take what's called Louisiana crunch cake. It's just a little cake that you buy at the store, and I would turn it into a pineapple upside down cake in 5 minutes in a cup. But people really like to see, oh, what's Tony eating on his camping? Well, I've gotten comments like, oh, your eating is so boring now. And I've responded back that, well, at least you get to watch a video because if I wasn't eating the way that I'm eating, I wouldn't be here, because I was dying. I was, dying, maybe not right now, but diabetes is a silent killer. I mean, along with heart disease and all that kind of stuff. So really, I'm saying you should be thankful that I'm eating this way. But I've gotten a ton of comments like, "Oh my goodness, I love watching you cook that ribeye," along in a parking lot, or something like that. So I've gotten a lot. It's some people just really enjoyed the way I cooked, but I just have to remind them that I wouldn't be here even making a video if it wasn't for me eating this way.
Right. So, what is your typical pattern when you're eating? Is it like 2 meals a day, or are you just doing like an intuitive eating kind of thing? And
So sometimes, depending on what I'm doing and what I ate maybe the day before, because I noticed if I eat a chuck roast, do a chuck roast in a crock pot, if I eat that, I might not be hungry for 24 or 30 hours later. So it really depends what I eat. If I get up in the morning and I throw some hamburger in a pan and crack some eggs in it with some butter, I'll eat that. And well, maybe I'll want to eat it. At 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe I'll want to eat again or be a little more hungry at 7 o'clock at night, and I'll maybe throw two hamburger patties in, or But if I eat a ribeye, I may not eat again for the next 24 hours. So it really depends on what I eat and how much I eat. And I only eat till I'm full, you know?
And how do family and friends feel about this when they see eating, eggs and steak?
Well, actually, the family has, really been encouraging because they know the benefits that they see in me, the increased energy, the clarity of mind. Um, you know, we go out to restaurants together, and I'll order, a patty or a hamburger patty or something like that, or I'll just eat more before we go out. It's not a distraction for them. They're very encouraged by it. And, they've even looked into it and tried different things. And, I don't just cook for myself. I mean, if I make a ribeye, my wife's a nurse and she comes home and she says, well, maybe can you throw me in a sweet potato? So she'll do that, but she's actually leaning towards that as well. But other family members, I mean, I do get some people that a couple people were like really, really like, oh my goodness, you're gonna die, eating like that, or oh, and on my YouTube channel, that's where I get a lot of comments, just because I'll be like salt. I'm taking my salt and I'm really putting salt on my ribeye, and in the last video I was at an old train station, and I'm sprinkling Malden's, the Queen salt, with the big flakes, and I get comments like, that's going to raise your blood pressure, and all this stuff. Salt's bad for you. And I even said in the comment in the video, I said, I'm going to get a lot of comments about that because I've gotten them in the past. And I said, but on my last blood test, the only thing I was low in is sodium. So, because when the doctor told me, she says, well, you're low in sodium. And I said, oh, you know what? I eat a lot of salt. She goes, yeah, but you need to eat more. And when has a doctor told you to eat more salt, right? But when you think about it, nothing that I eat comes salted. There's no added sodium to anything that I eat unless I add it, So that's it's one for the doctor. They telling me to eat more salt. So I'm like, hey, my doctor told me to do this.
Uh, what surprises me is the doctor seems quite understanding or accepting of the lifestyle.
Yeah. So, getting back to that doctor's appointment when I went in there 8 weeks after, there's been an ongoing education with her. In fact, when I went back 3 months later, well, actually 6 months later, I had my 3 month. She said things are looking good, but they talk to you about cholesterol every time you even call them to make an appointment. They're like, "Hey, we got this new," but going in there, my PA is very understanding. She goes, "Well, let's give it a year, see where you're at in a year." And she did say, as long as you keep, your A1C below 8, I'm okay with that. But really like you to add fiber. Would like you to get the cholesterol down. So um, I would just go, okay. So she thought I was still taking my cholesterol medicine even 3 months out, but I wasn't, and the numbers came down a little bit, even off the meds. But when I went back in for this recent one, I just went last week, and all my numbers are good. And one of the things that she did say is, she goes, well, the cholesterol number isn't really, your bad cholesterol's, still kind of high. And I said, really? She goes, yeah. and we have we're seeing real good results with this new medication, and it's this, and we're seeing that. I said, oh, how's my good cholesterol? And she goes, oh, well, let me look. And she goes, oh, wow, it's really high. And I said, so I got high bad and high good. What should I do? And she goes, well, let me do a formula. And she did a formula, and she goes, oh, well, that's really balanced, you know? And it's just that, the always constantly trying to push that, new med, the cholesterol med, that's what's really been educational for me, is that I'm almost like a ticket for them to practice on their, saying their new spiel. Like, I used to be a pharmaceutical buyer and used to have people come in all the time to talk to our pharmacists, because I worked in a closed door pharmacy, and it only corresponded to me just recently. That was like 15 years ago. And every time a drug med wanted to come in, have a sit down lunch with all the pharmacists. So I'd organize the class, and they would come in, and they would always be talking about the new med. And then, as I was the buyer, so I would start seeing that new med, on the shelves going out, and have to do a formulary, check all these things. And I never put together the correlation between the two, but they would come in for the lunch and go, these are continuing education classes for the pharmacy. And that, I'm starting to see a big wheel here, which I'm kind of sad about. But they really do, get that front door, because continuing education, you got to keep your, get those hours in. So they kind of have a very uh, audience, a very captive audience, because the pharmacists want to get their hours in.
Right. So, it just sounds like something from a regular kind of business sales meeting in a way, Um,
It was.
if like the sales manager calls all the salespeople into a meeting on a Monday and says, "Okay, look, we haven't we haven't been making many sales of this widget for a while, right? So for the next 2 weeks, we're going to focus on trying to push this widget as much as possible." And so what every salesperson does is they immediately come out of that room and they get on the phones and they talk to their clients and they say, like, we've been looking at your situation and we think that you need this widget. And,
Yeah.
I'm willing to come down there and explain how this widget's gonna benefit you and all this kind of thing, right? And it's almost the same kind of thing. It feels like they've gone to a continuous
Mhm.
education thing, or they've gone to some kind of luncheon or whatever that's been put on by the pharmaceutical companies talking about the new medication,
The
and
new med.
then so every patient that comes into their office, they hit them with this, "Oh, by the way, there's this new cholesterol lowering medication that we can try." And while that's normal for anyone in any job, you just talk about what, you've been influenced to talk about. In
Right.
medicine, it's a little bit scary because you hope that they're
It
gonna be
is.
tailoring their advice to your situation.
That's the conception of doctors, and the medical industry, is that they're there to look at your health, but they are so heavily influenced, because even just going to the doctor's office, I know I've gotten there early one time just to walk in to say, hey, I want to check on my appointment, when's my next appointment, and they're having a lunch in the doctor's office from a pharmaceutical rep, or I'm standing there waiting for my appointment, and they'll come, and they say, we got all the food out here, and everybody's looking at their, how soon is it going to be, and then they go into an office, and have a lunch. They really cater, because they know that that's their salesman, is your physician, is your salesman. And to find a good uh, physician that's not motivated by that industry, because it's an industry, because I was a sales manager for a lot of years. I've always been in sales, and I know that whatever you want to push or whatever you are, selling, you educate yourself on that and you look for an audience. Well, they have a captive audience, because you're coming there looking for the best that you can get when you're really getting the best that the pharmaceuticals say that they have to offer for this condition. I mean, look at how many times you get asked, it's almost like within the 5 minutes, first 5 minutes. Hey, we got this new thing. Do you want this shot? Do you want that shot? You're in that age. Being in sales. I can pick up pretty well on sales pitches, and that's all it feels like when I go to the doctors anymore. So being outside of that now, with my own health, it's really the same concept. I've really gotten to understand that over this last year, being able to implement things that I'm learning on the carnivore diet, and having all the benefits of it and seeing what it's doing to me. Unfortunately, I have to go to the doctors just to do that blood test for that, because they want to see. And I don't want to lose a physician, but they have worked with me, and it's been a year now. So they're still trying to push me on stuff every once in a while, to bring that cholesterol down. So I kind of almost wish I wouldn't have told them that I was carnivore, because that opened up a whole thing. Because now they're looking at it from their educational perspective, going, because everything that you're showing them with what the results are, it is in conflict with what they are learning and also what the industry is telling them. All their schooling. How many doctors? I mean, if you walk into your local physician that you go to, how many of them actually took a nutritional course? You know, Probably none of them, or maybe a couple hours on a small course, but that they're not into learning all about what food actually does.
Yeah, but they're quite happy to dispense the advice about fiber, but they don't really understand what's going on. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So, Tony, if a friend came to you and said, I want to give carnivore a try, what do I
Mm.
do? What advice would you give them, or what tips would you give them for getting started?
So I would first tell them, look up carnivore and whatever medical issue you have. So many people are getting into carnivore for dietary reasons, to lose weight, because that's the number one question I get asked is, how much weight did you lose? And weight is so different. Like, I'm not the same size that I was when I was non-carnivore. I was at, even on that medicine, I was like, I'm eating muscle now, so my whole body composition's changed immensely because muscle's heavier than fat. But I would tell them, what medical conditions are you looking to deal with as well? Look carnivore up on YouTube, but the best advice I would give you, if you're going to do it, give yourself at least a month. And make sure that first week is going to be rough. Make sure you prep. I mean, you don't, because your hunger is going to be driven by your gut, not your mind or your body. It's going to be that gut bacteria or whatever it's in there that says, hey, you need to eat. It's going to be like a half an hour and you're starving and you rush in there, and that's when you're going to start to fail. But let yourself fail, in the beginning. You know, don't worry about it. Get back on the horse, uh, if you fail, but don't be scared to fail. But also don't be thinking, oh, this is going to be so easy and I can just get home and cook when I want to cook. No, prep, prep for that first week with bacon, strips of bacon, carry them with you when you go out in the car. I do a lot of traveling as well. And people are like, how do you travel and still do carnivore? Well, you prep. And, but I would say for the first week, make sure you have at least enough to get you through that week that you can just grab and like do a bunch of burger. That's what I did. Burger, crumbles, threw that in a pan in the morning, cracked 4 eggs in it, and that was my breakfast. And then, lunch, I had 2 pieces of bacon. If I got hungry while I was out, I'd eat those quick. So just prep would be the biggest thing. But really, it's it's going to be something that, as you see the results, give yourself 30 days and then ask yourself at the end of 30 days if you don't feel better than you did before you started it. But that first week is a little rough, or can be. Some people have an easier time at it, that are like more keto-ish. They don't struggle as much.
Nice advice. So Tony, how can people find you on YouTube?
Oh, okay. Well, my channel is Random Adventures 2.0. Yeah, on YouTube.
No worries. Well, I'll link to your channel in the show notes.
Oh,
Tony,
thank you.
thank you so much for coming back on and letting us know how things are going. I really appreciate your time.
I'm really glad to come back and share the testimony of how things are going. And I do want to say that I will never be going back to non-carnivore. This is just amazing. 443 days has been a real blessing for me. Just the health benefits and everything is incredible. Now that full interview was on No Carb Life, Dave Mack's channel. Now Dave Mack is MAC, so Dave Mack, and he's interviewed multiple people. I was number 1,200. Hope you enjoyed that. Go over and check his channel out because he's got a lot of great interviews on there. And if you want to know more about carnivore, I'll tell you what, YouTube has got a lot of information on there, and a lot of doctors like Dr. Ken Berry, Dr. Chafee, Homestead House, not a doctor, but a lot of testimonials and stuff. But take a look at that. And, well, I think if you want to see maybe this playlist right here is some camping videos that maybe you haven't seen. All right, well, thanks a lot for coming along. Don't forget about saying stuff in the comments, and we will see you on the next one. Random Adventures 2.0 out.